F.
I played the wrong clip.
Off to a great start.
Off to a great start. I meant to play the intro. All right. Thank you guys for coming by. Like I said, this is Diazable's Interviews. This is the first interview I'm doing. It's going to be very choppy and all over the place because I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm having fun. And it's even better because I'm with a very, very special person that I know that I'm really excited to talk to. He is a member of the band Recon, Scavengers, the owner of Maitsuba Record Label, yeah, and an avid Twitch and Game Boy modifier. My good friend, Mr. John Torn, yeah.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm happy to be here.
This is the most Diazable thing I've ever done. Of all the things I've done, this is the most easily Diazed.
I'm so glad. It's very Diazable in many ways and forms. Before we start, how are we doing, Mr. Torn? How's your day going?
Pretty good. It's 8:30 at night here. So it's probably like, some other time where you are.
It is 9:30 a.m. over here out in Korea. 13-hour difference.
Holy shit. Yeah. Okay. Is it okay to swear?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
It's gonna happen. There's gonna be slips. Why?
Yeah. All right.
Why split hairs?
Now that I know I can swear, I'm having a great day.
All right.
Yeah.
Swearing makes the day just a lot better. Yes. So okay. Yeah. So Mr. Torn here has been involved in the hardcore scene, I would say in the New York area throughout your life, correct?
Yeah. So I'm from Albany, New York, which is like a couple hours north of New York City. So like I would feel like a liar if I said I was like a New York hardcore guy, because Albany hardcore is its own thing.
Oh, so like throughout your life and currently, would you say it's very like still like Albany, New York, or like has it gotten like
it's just
merged?
I don't mean it's separate like that. I just mean like I've gone to probably thousands of shows in Albany area and like 100 in New York City over my whole life. Yeah.
I see. Well, that's one of my great things I wanted to ask and everything. It's one of my notes over here. The Albany scene, like growing up, I don't know if you had a chance to talk a lot about it in interviews or with other people, but I'd love to give you a chance to like, how has the Albany scene like been in your life? Like, could you like, I guess, not yet how it's changed, but like, how was it growing up with it? Like, what was it like?
So picture it. Albany, New York, 1995.
Okay.
I'm listening to WVCR radio, even more so than that. I'm riding around with my friends. They're a little bit older and can drive already. And everyone I'm hanging out with is always playing a demo by this band, One King Down. That and this CD by this band, Donuts. Now,
wait, did you say correctly? Like
what?
Donuts, the food?
Yeah. Swedish hardcore band, Donuts. They broke up before the 90s were over, I think. But
okay.
Yeah. Vegan, straight edge, from Umeå, Sweden. But that's another story. So anyway, I go get the Donut CD at the local record store. I never got a chance to see them. They played Albany once, but before I started going to shows. But the other thing, more important to my personal story, is besides that, everybody's playing the demo by this band, One King Down. And I'm like, I want to buy this, but like, I hadn't gone to any shows yet. So I'm like asking my friends to copy it for me. So then I'm wearing out my copy, just like in my, Radio Shack brand Walkman, like every day listening to it as I'm walking around. And finally, I say to one of my friends, so this band plays around here, like they're a local band. I can just go see them, right? And my friend gives me a list of shows. At the time, One King Down was playing like a lot in Albany because it's before they were like way before they were on Equal Vision Records or anything. Like,
Oh, before, like, were they on a smaller label or not even signed at that time?
they were on Trainwreck Records, which uh, only ever put out a few local bands like Stigmata and Withstand, and I think they did
Oh,
a Clay People CD and
okay,
One
some
King
heavy
Down and
hitters.
maybe something else. But this was before their CD was out, even.
Oh,
Um, so it was just the demo, and my friend copies like a list of shows for me, like the shows at like the more like at the clubs and also like DIY shows. And I'm like, okay, how about this one? Are you going to this one? They're playing with these bands Starkweather and Human Remains. And so I go with my friends to see Starkweather, One King Down, Human Remains. First hardcore show I ever went to. And all three bands were fucking awesome. And that day completely changed my life forever because I was like, well, the Starkweather band, like, still one of my favorite bands. One King Down's still one of my favorite bands. Human Remains, I wouldn't say they're like top five or anything, but still fucking awesome.
mm.
And I then went to the next show I went to was this band Section 8, and they were on the local like college radio station all the time. Saw
Okay,
them,
Section
and it
8.
was Section 8, Cutthroat, CD release party for Cutthroat, Straight Jacket, and opening was this band from Connecticut called Hatebreed. So
Open. Whoa. Did I just
yeah,
hear
this is
hate
this is
breed and
1995.
open? I know. I love hearing it. Like, whoa, that's crazy. Like, because this is way before like I was even aware of this stuff. So just hearing that, I'm
Right.
like, that. Oh yeah, that had to happen at some point.
Yeah, yeah. Everybody starts somewhere.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh.
yeah, and then the third show I went to, and I'm not going to give you a list of every single show I went to, but the third show I went to was also a Section 8 show. Wait, nope, that's not true. One King Down. But within a couple of months, I went to another Section 8 show where this band Dissolve was playing,
Mm.
and they've since been top three bands for me for sure. And I've had in more recent years, had the honor to put out some of their records and stuff. So it all comes. And anyway,
Full
um,
circle in a way.
yeah. But from there, traveling around a lot. One King Down One King Down got me into shows. Albany hardcore in the '90s was awesome because it was you could go to like the big shows that were 16 up, but you could just get in. If you know you could just get in. Because I was like 14 and no one cared.
Yeah, it's
Um,
like whatever. It was, I'll say the
yeah,
'90s, but no one really
yeah.
cared.
There
Just
were
don't be
shows
a
like that.
fucking.
You could go to four shows in a 3-day weekend. You know what I'm saying? Because you could go see like you know, uh, Withstand and One King Down and like 25 to Life or something on a Friday, and then Saturday, go to a show at like a college or whatever and see like Monster X and Catharsis or something, and then Sunday afternoon go to a matinee show at this place Saratoga Winners, maybe see some death metal bands like Skinless, who is still a celebrated band,
They're
still
still ripping it. I love them.
yeah, they still get better, every record. And then maybe Sunday night go back to QE2 where you were just at Friday night and see I don't know some other bands. And that's what it was like for me in my teens in the '90s. And then I know I'm like 30 or 40 years old now. I'm 42 and a half years old. So obviously I'm going to have that nostalgia for how things were when I was younger, right?
Hmm.
But it was fucking sick when I was younger. And then, I've still gone to shows ever since, like, um, you know, in the 2000s, there were more like bands I wasn't really as into as much, but also in the 2000s, I was touring a lot.
So it
And
was
when
kind of
I
like
was
a.
home, not on tour, I had no money because I was a broke traveling musician. So
Mm,
I
it
missed
was a
out
good.
on a lot of the bands in the 2000s, but
I understand. I guess it's that I would say the ebb and flow of life.
yeah,
You were everyone. It's very hard to be in the scene, have your like to be so involved all the time throughout your whole life. That's impressive.
yeah.
And we have our lulls, I'm
Yeah,
guessing.
I would say I've been involved steadily, not necessarily like lately I don't go to as many shows, but I still like to think I'm very involved. I mean, I'm putting out records and shit.
I that's
But I got to get up early for work in the morning.
yeah, which makes me wonder how early are you getting up for work?
Uh, you know, I'm drinking coffee right now. I'm just gonna fucking stay up all night, and then no, not really. I'll get up eventually.
Oh, oh, you are a machine, good sir. I was about to say.
Yeah, no, I'm an old man. I can't do that.
Oh, okay, okay. So, so it sounds like you don't go to shows that often, but you still, would you say, like, I'm guessing at how the Albany scene is now and back then, of course there's going to be some changes and anything, but anything like big noticeable changes or something that you've noticed over the years?
Uh, yeah, there's definitely been periods of time where it kind of sucked. Um, and maybe
I think
that's
every
just
scene
me.
has gone through that. Every city has, we've
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Right now, I think it's in a really good spot, actually. Because even if I'm not going to shows as much, I'm still aware of what's going on. And we have lots of venues now, which was not the case for a while. And we have the big venues and the small venues.
Oh,
And
okay. Which makes you think, like, if you could like put a number, venues back then and venues now, like how many like are there now and then to see the difference? Estimated
uh,
numbers you could throw out.
I mean, there's always like those venues that kind of like rotate in and out. Like there'll be a VFW hall or something that does
Hmm.
shows for like 6 months or maybe 2 years until they realize what the hell you're doing with their back room and they stop letting you do shows.
Hey, y'all need to chill out. What's going on back here?
Yeah, yeah. But I would say there's like a good, I don't know, half a dozen venues around now.
Mm.
There are probably a good half a dozen venues around at any given time when I was growing up.
Oh, okay. So it's consistent. It's about it's
Yeah,
always the same amount, but it just changes. The venues change a lot because people are like,
yeah.
oh,
But I mean,
hardcore
again, there's
metal.
there's been lulls where it's you know sometimes you lose all the venues at once. It only takes like one fight to lose a venue sometimes, which is why fighting at shows is fucking stupid. But
Very stupid. If you're
yeah.
listening, guys, just throwing that out there.
But
We're all there to have a
yeah,
good
I mean,
time.
yeah, but as of right now, there's like, yeah, probably half a dozen venues that have like been going strong for like a little bit. Like, and I would say since the dawn of time, which in this day and age means like since the pandemic, there's been probably a good half a dozen venues that have been doing shows solidly since shows were able to start happening again.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah, and I guess makes me think also like post Corona and everything. I mean, I don't know, were you going to shows a lot afterwards or just like hearing about it? Like, I'm guessing it was just like ever boom, 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 like it it popped off a lot in Albany.
Yeah, it's definitely been like there was a venue, Northern Lights, or sorry, Upstate. It used to be called Northern Lights, and it was called Upstate Concert Hall. But I think they basically moved. They were in the process of selling the building or whatever. I don't know all the details, but they were moving
Right.
around like 2019. I think they were getting ready to move. They moved into a whole new building like during the pandemic, Empire Live, which also has Empire Underground below it. So that
Oh,
venue, now that's two venues. Also, it's in Albany. It used to be in Clifton Park, which is half an hour up in the middle of nowhere.
ooh,
So that
random
just got better
location.
because it moved right into town, and now it's two venues instead of one. And the sound and vibe and everything is better than Upstate Concert Hall ever was, in my opinion. There were lots of good shows at Upstate Concert Hall. It just was not a very good room. It was like,
I mean,
I'm not
I can
saying
totally
everything
get that.
needs to sound like perfect, but you want to be able to hear the music good.
Right, right. So
There's a
I
lot of
totally.
like DIY venues. There's still a lot of shows where it's like on the flyer. It's just it won't tell you the address. It'll just be like ask a punk, because it's like in someone's basement or something. That's
Well
always been a
now.
thing in Albany for the almost 30 years I've been going to shows. Like when I was in my 20s and like living pretty close to where all the stuff was going on. Um, like living like around the corner from the main venue, Valentine's. Sometimes my friends and I would just be like walking around in the evening, and we'd see someone like riding their bike, be like, "Oh, what are you doing?" Like, "Oh, I'm going to see Drop Dead in so and so's basement." And I've been to basements to see shows that like I don't even know who lived there, and I couldn't even tell you where it was. I was never there again, but just like there was some show in a basement. So that's what Albany has been like at different points in time. Like you could literally like throw a rock and hit like a Drop Dead show. So
Oh, that's really amazing coming from like where I'm coming from in this perspective. Like, I feel bad saying that I got into the scene late, like in like '07. Granted, when I was like in university, but like hearing like I've never heard in San Antonio too, in Texas, but I've never
Yeah.
heard of like there was always a venue you'd always see it on the flyer. I've never seen it said it would say Ask a Punk on the flyer.
That
Like,
or like, I mean, now like the internet's a
well,
thing, so it'll be like DM so and so for address,
mhm.
you know.
I can see that,
But
but I can
yeah,
see that back in the
Ask a Punk definitely used to be literally you would see that on flyers. Ask a Punk, you know,
oh
because I
wow.
mean, I had an apartment where we would do shows in the basement, and uh, we had lots of shows until we flew too close to the sun, and the cops found out we were doing shows in the basement, and
Ah.
we almost all got evicted. So, because like the
Mm.
landlord was cool with it until the cops started giving him a hard time, you know?
Which then, once someone's breathing down on his neck, he's got to breathe down on y'all's neck. It's
Yeah,
the trickle
yeah,
down effect. Yeah, I get
yeah.
it.
And you gotta be careful because you have like a band coming in on tour. You want to get as many people there as possible to make it worth stopping in your city, and you want a good amount of people there so they get their fucking gas money and shit. But then
Mm.
it's a fine line if you're doing a show that's not technically league well, you know. So
Yeah, I can kind of understand, especially now with living here in Korea and doing some internationally different stuff in terms of like, yeah, some bands and whatnot. Yeah, I get it. Which also makes me another thing. Like, I've heard of kind of heard of basement shows, but never really talked to anyone who's been to basement shows because
oh
Texas, San Antonio, we don't have basements.
oh shit, that's
So,
right. Yeah.
yeah. So, like, I don't know if you can give me a little rundown, like, what's like the vibe and feels of basement shows? Because, yeah, like, that sounds amazing, slash kind of, I'm thinking like the beams in the middle, like, kind of dangerous. I don't know.
It can be. So in like 2002, 2003, I had an apartment that was I lived in the hardcore house, but there's been many houses called the hardcore house, even just in that like 10 block radius in Albany. But upstairs it was my friend Scott, who was in like Trip Face and Lariat and everything, and at the time he was in a band called Burning Bridges. Hans, who was also in Burning Bridges, was one of his roommates. Linwood, who was in Lariat, was one of their roommates. This guy Sawyer lived there as well. And then I lived downstairs with my buddy from high school who hated hardcore metal, anything with distorted guitars. He hated it. He loved music. He hated anything heavy. And this poor guy had to deal with band practices in the basement right below his bedroom every night,
Oh,
except
oh,
for days when we had shows. So then he'd have to suffer through that, this poor guy.
wow.
But basically, uh, so we had a backyard that you could access from the front. Like there was a little fence. The houses were all pretty close to each other, but there would be like, like maybe like a gate in between the houses. You take the one gate that leads to our backyard. And then there'd, be you go back there, you see a bunch of people, hanging out in the backyard, trying to keep it down, and then they see you, and they're looking at you, trying to make sure you're not a cop,
Trying to
in
suss
some
you out,
sort of
like,
square,
what's going
and
on?
then you're like, hey man, I heard there's a show, and they're like, oh yeah, just go down the basement steps, and you go down into the basement steps, and when we first started doing shows at that house, the basement looked like Resident Evil, it was all fucked up. Like I
Ooh.
think it might have been an apartment itself, like maybe 100 years earlier, but it was all fucked up. But Scott from Trip Face and everything really like fixed it up. I think he tore down some walls and built up some other walls, but made it so instead of this like all right, I'll say this: one of the early shows we had there, it was like there was like a small living room and then like little bedrooms because it used to be in an apartment again like
Mm.
decades earlier. So like the guitar player and some of the crowd would be like in kind of one of the rooms, and then the drummer would be in the living room because it was too small. So
No.
Scott made it so it's kind of more just one big room, but then there's still the beams that you want to watch out for if you're.
Mhm.
And then also like the ceiling was pretty low. And I remember there was one band where the singer was like punching holes in the ceiling, and after one of their songs, I was like, "Yo, you gotta fucking stop!" Like, You're not the only band that's going to play here. You know what I mean?
You're literally destroying our venue.
Yeah. But yeah. So I'm trying to think how to. I don't know if I really answered your question, but basically,
No, no,
you
give me
usually go into a
insight.
backyard and people look at you weird if they don't recognize you. Because I've definitely gone to some basement shows where people are like, "Who the fuck are you?" You know, they don't say it, but they're thinking it.
The vibes are there.
And
That
yeah, and or sometimes people would know that like I also went to like the more pro shows. That this guy Ted Etal would book the shows at like most of the shows like the more like professional venues, bars and stuff. So people would be like, "Oh, that kid goes to Ted shows," or like post Recon, it was like, "Oh, that guy's a mosh metal kid. What the fuck's he doing here?" I'm like, guys, I've been going to these things for fucking like over 10 years at this point. Like, I'm
I've
not,
been in the game. I'm
yeah, I'm not a
here.
fucking narc. Like, let me in, you know?
Y'all know me. Y'all have seen me play. Y'all. I don't want to
Apparently, you
drop the
don't like
car.
me, but you've seen me.
Yeah. Oh, that's yeah, cause yeah, like you some like gave me a good insight on basement shows because like
Yeah.
yeah, Texas done that. Well, I guess now I kind of know basement shows with living in Korea
Okay.
because a
They
lot
got
of
basements in
venues are
Korea.
yeah, low because a lot of buildings have like underground like parking garage or
Okay.
like some base like you have a just a basement floor for a restaurant or a business, and some people will
Sure.
gut those out and just make it into like a venue, but it's like on top of a building, so it's not like a house basement. It's a basement,
Sure. Yeah.
but in a different
You've
sense.
now been below the surface of the earth.
Yes, I've
Yeah.
below. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was gonna say I've seen shows, but soon possibly
Okay. Okay.
playing shows underground soon. Soon.
Oh. All right. Okay. Okay.
I'm trying to get more comfortable by saying that, but yeah, soon I'll be hopefully playing in some venues
Awesome.
around here. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Um, I was gonna go back to I forgot to talk about you bringing up Hatebreed as an intro, like watching them, but you just brought up Recon, so I'm
Yeah.
like, let's talk a little bit about good old Recon because
Sure.
I always love Recon. I
Nice.
always every time I see a Recon song come on my playlist, I gotta send it to you just because it makes me feel so joyful. Like
Hell yeah.
Recon, you've heard it probably many times. One of the in the best way, dumb heaviest, like just so freaking heavy. Just those memes of like heaviest things in the world, and then Recon's 13 playing. Like I'll never forget when I first saw Recon's the song 13. It was either the music video. Yeah, I think it was like a music video for the song, or you got playing it
We had
live.
like live footage. We never had like
Oh, okay,
a music video.
that must have been it. I specifically remember it was MySpace. I was scrounging for like heavy bands, just da da da, and just came across. I don't know how I just came across y'all. And I was just like, what is this? It's it's so ignorantly dumb, and like in the best way ever. It
Hell
was
yeah. Thank
like
you.
I was
That's a
like,
great compliment because like that's no one ever says like that we were like dumb heavy, and I always feel like people are like thinking it but not saying it. Like it's okay. It was dumb heavy, you know. Like
I'm not. Yeah, like if I was saying it's dumb heavy, I would put it in a very literal. But I'm saying in all best ways. Like at the time I was thinking because I was listening like Slipknot other stuff, and I legit was like, I
sure.
don't want to listen to Slipknot anymore. Like this is not that heavy anymore. Recon is 100 like this style of
Yeah.
music is 100 times heavier than Slipknot, and I stopped like listening to like death that kind of death metal blast beats like stuff, and I
Oh
was like,
wow.
I gotta refocus because yeah, it just blew my mind.
Damn.
Yeah, and because I was looking stuff, a lot of written interviews about Recon, but uh, historically, like video speaking, like curious, like because I have notes here. Formed in like you guys been around since about 2006, I think, or earlier than that.
I joined in '06, but I think the band started like maybe end of '03 or early '04.
Okay, so it's been in the game at this point 20 plus years, and there's been some flows within everything. Reformed in 2012. Um, with all like, I would love to get some oral history from you about Recon, like your journey through Recon and stuff, like how you
Sure.
like what it feels to you in your heart when you hear Recon and everything.
Dude, I mean, in my heart, like literally, like honestly, in my heart, like as corny as it might sound, like,
Never corny here.
uh, dude, I mean, it's some of the best times of my life. Like, um, well, I'll so my journey through Recon, I, I knew those guys from their other bands, like since they were teenagers. When, dude, I remember running into Mike, who later became, I mean, I became close friends with all those guys. Mike ended up being my best man at my wedding, but rewind to 2003.
Oh, I
Rewind to
did.
2003, and I ran into Mike, and it was like the first time I met him, and he's like, "Hey, you're in that band Save Yourself," which was a band I was playing guitar in, and
Oh, I gotta
he
write that
told me about
down.
his Save Yourself song he really liked. I was like, "Holy shit, thanks!" Like I don't think anyone really pays that much attention to our songs, so thank you. And then he was asking me for band advice, and I gave him the worst advice ever, which thankfully he didn't listen to, because he was like, "Yo, I started this band," which was Recon, and we booked a show, but we only have like 4 songs. I was like, "Dude, don't play until you got like a good solid set." He ignored my advice, and they just like hit the ground running and kind of like,
Oh,
yeah. So basically, when they first started, they made a demo that I didn't even know about until way later, because they like erased that demo from history. They made a demo in like the singer's bedroom in Chris's
hmm.
apartment, or the old singer Chris, or anyway, the singer Chris, in his apartment, and there was a demo after that. I only knew about the demo after that because by the time I saw one of their shows, they were on to the second demo. I found out later on that the living room demo or bedroom demo, whatever, only maybe like 20 people had, and they were literally like, they remembered who had bought it, and they're like, "Yo, we'll give you the new demo for free if you give that back to us," because it was
Yeah.
like
Is it
that
like
bad,
kind of shame? Like they just were not. Like, did you happen to listen? Is it like completely different?
I heard it later on, and it's just I mean, it just sounds like kids playing like in their first band. You know what I mean? Like
No shade or
Tony and
anything, but yeah.
yeah, Tony and Paul had been in bands before. Chris had played drums in bands before, but I don't think had ever sang in a band before. I don't think, and Mike
Hmm.
had never really been in a band before. But then by the time of like what I thought was the first demo, like it's like, oh, okay, like this band is like, you know, pretty good. Like I was like had pretty low expectations. I don't mean that in a bad way, but just I was like, oh, it's like more like mosh stuff. I was like, yeah. And then I was like, oh shit, okay, this is good. And then they did another demo. Sorry, that was the 2004 demo. Was the first one
Hmm.
I heard. Where I was like, oh, these guys are actually pretty good.
But
Um,
off it was just called a demo. It didn't have a name to it. It was just like their
it was like
04
as
demo.
like 2004 demo or '04 demo or something.
Okay.
If you buy the vinyl that I put out, um,
Everyone, check out the vinyl real quick.
this is the you know first
The
CD
reissue,
released on
correct?
vinyl with demo tracks. Um,
Ooh,
and yeah, I think
extra
it was called the
content.
2004 demo.
Oh, I never. Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I missed that.
yeah. This is we can talk about this. I assume we're going to talk about Maitsuba at some point, but so
Absolutely, good
talk
sir.
about that later. But yeah, just a 2004 demo. Then there was a demo that I think was called 2005 demo, and that came out in I
Oh,
want to say 2005, uh, which would explain the name, I guess.
I guess,
But
and this is all strictly like staying within the Albany area because I never heard about all this until literally now. So,
actually, uh, the 2000 in 2005 on that demo, they started touring. They did like a week or two tour in 2005. They'd only been a band for like a year, and meanwhile, my band Save Yourself um, had not done any tours after being banned for like 3 years, and I'd been in a band before that from like high school that had
mhm.
never done any touring. And I was like, man, those guys, I don't know what the fuck they're doing, but they're doing it right. Like I'm fucking up. Like I want to go break down and lose all my money on tour. Like I just want to go on adventures. That's all I ever wanted to do, playing music. Besides like write music I really like, is I wanted to go on adventures, and
Right.
So 2005, they did their first tour, and they had 2 demos out. And actually, I think they sold like 1,000 copies of one of those demos. I feel like I heard that number at some point. But
I guess
then,
in 2005, that's peak, like still like people buying CDs, no MP3 stuff like that. So that's
right,
extremely well.
yeah. And then 2006, Paul joined on drums. Paul. Oh, I said earlier that I had seen Paul in bands before, but I had, but Paul was not playing those first couple years of Recon shows. It was this guy
Mhm.
Jeff, that's more like a death metal drummer. He plays in that band Tentacles. That is more. I don't know if you would have heard of them, but
First year, though,
um,
definitely want to check.
he's like,
Always want to check out new bands.
we were always kind of like, man, like, I mean, me as an outsider at that point, and those guys, I think, as insiders, as in the band at that point, I think we're probably already like, man, like Jeff's like too good because he was like a crazy technical death metal guy. But then Paul Dove is like, honestly, dude, like one of the best, like, mosh breakdown style hardcore drummers you can find. Um,
No,
like he hits hard and he's got like interesting fills, but he doesn't overdo it. Solid. So anyway, he
he gives
joined
the people what
Recon.
they need, what they want. He just gets
Yeah,
it.
he joined
Mm.
Recon, and then they were getting ready to record Graves, the first CD, um, and Tony, who was playing bass at that point, posted on MySpace like, "Hey, does anyone want to play play bass in a band?" And my band Save Yourself broken up. I played in like a couple bands after that had like broken up or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, dude, I'm itching to play music, and like I've been playing guitar for the last few years, but I'm really a bass player. Like, what's
Oh,
going on? And he's like, oh, actually, this is for Recon. I want to switch to second guitar and get a bass player and like, be a 5-piece, but I don't want to play bass anymore. I was like, dude, I'd love to play bass, but I didn't end up playing on Graves because I joined as they already had the studio time booked, and so I'd practiced with them a few times, but they were like, we can only afford. It was either 1 or 2 days in the studio. They're like, we've been playing as a 4-piece with this lineup for like a year or whatever, however long. They're like,
mhm.
we just want to go in, play, you know, how we've been doing it. I was like, I understand. So I was like in the gang vocals, but I didn't actually play bass on the CD.
Time
But
constraint, everything. I get it.
yeah, but by the time the CD came out, we did the release party. I was already in the band at that point, and we hit the road
Viper
pretty
City,
hard.
certified classic.
Yeah, thanks. And that was on Closed Casket Activities. That was, I think, Closed Casket release number 4. Um,
Wait, Close Casket released the Vipers. No, no.
Graves.
Oh, Graves, because I'm pretty sure. Because the one thing that always caught my eye is that it was released on Rise. That threw me off because
Yeah, the
Recon
the
didn't.
full length was released on Rise, but I mean, we never would have got. I mean, maybe we would have got to that point without Closed Casket, but Closed
Mm.
Casket really helped the band out. Justin really took care of us, like went above and beyond, because that was really just, hey guys, I want to put out your CD, not like I want to take care of you and like we're gonna sign a contract and everything. He really did way more for us than he signed up to do. He really took care of us, and now Closed Casket is like fucking household name in heavy music.
Yeah, like you can't
And
go
he would
anywhere else.
never put out a band as shitty as Recon again. Like he just no, he puts out
Shitty,
like I,
no.
I'm
But I
maybe being
feel,
a little like tongue in
yeah.
cheek, self deprecating, but he like puts out like damn, like he puts out like fucking top notch shit now. You know what I mean?
It's stiff
Um,
competition because Close Casket, any like if they put something out, it's just like it's gold. It's just like oh,
yeah, we
oh,
were
oh,
really
you
proud to be on his label back then, but now looking back years later, it's like wow, that's actually. I mean,
very impressive.
yeah, you could go up to anyone on the street and brag about that. Yo, I was on Closed Casket,
Say
and
what? Like that's
yeah,
that's street cred all like out the
right.
butt right there.
Yeah, and whatever stranger you're saying that to, will just be like, "All right, Grandpa, let's get you back to bed," But yeah, so then we hit the road hard. We toured for a couple weeks. At the time, So I was like, dude, I was 25 when I joined that band in 2006, and Chris was like, our singer was like 23, but the rest of the guys are teenagers, you know. Um, like Tony, I think
Oh,
was still in high school, maybe,
there's that big of
or
a
dropped
age
out.
gap between you? Oh,
Yeah. So I remember we were on tour with Pale Horse later that year, like a 5 week U.S. tour where we played probably 2.5 weeks worth of shows because we broke down so many times.
uh,
Like van breakdowns, not
yeah,
like
let's
body
say
breakdowns.
physically, mental. Ah!
And no, like our van broke down. Um, but still had a great time, great adventure. But I remember I turned 26 on that tour, and Mike turned 20 on that tour, and
Oh,
I think
wow.
Tony was still 18. I think.
Now I think I know why you look so youthful. You surround yourself by youthful people.
Well, also when they're sleeping, I steal their blood and take baths in it.
Oh, you do that too?
Yeah.
I thought I was the only one doing that. You
No,
gotta,
man. I mean, it's an old, it's basically it's in the Farmer's Almanac. People have been knowing about it. But yeah, so for example, we did a 5 week tour where we played probably 2.5 weeks worth of shows because we had so many van breakdowns. But it was still like I
dang,
wouldn't trade that experience for anything. And keep in mind, I'm 25 years old. I got an apartment, not my parents' insurance because in America, you need health insurance or if you get sick, you might as well fucking die. So
practically.
yeah, so I was working at Starbucks because at the time you could
Oh,
get health insurance from there for pretty cheap, working part time. So I'd work full time in between tours, only eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, maybe pasta sometimes, so I could afford to pay my rent when we went on tour, because we were losing money to go on tour. But
I
it'd
think
always
most.
be, you
I was
know,
gonna say most bands. I think they're all like usually losing money, but like
yeah,
the joys of touring sometimes outweigh that a lot more, depending if you're
oh
not
yeah,
losing too much.
yeah, and it was like even it was awesome. Like I know people who some of my peers like from high school and stuff were already doctors or whatever at that point, and probably had like mansions or something. But I'm like, well, you haven't done this. Like having a big house is cool, but you know going on adventures is way fucking better.
Yeah, exactly. And
Um,
everyone lives their life differently, and like
yeah,
some people want to have more adventures and like having and not. I think it's very if you want to have those adventures, but you're not doing those adventures is very soul crushing. So the fact that you
yeah,
went out at that age to go and see places, do things, and have these memories forever locked in your heart, your head
yeah,
and like your heart and your brain, and then like when you
yeah.
see old friends, all those memories come back. Like
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
having money and stuff like that, but it's almost impossible to get what you've gotten over the years.
yeah. And I'm 42 and a half years old now. Like someone told me I'm middle aged. I guess that's probably true. But let me tell you, I'm not feeling any sort of midlife crisis feelings because I did all the crazy shit I wanted to do. Like I'm
Mm.
content. I still want to do more crazy shit, but like when there's time. I've got all the necessary crazy shit out of my system.
Oh, that
And I still have friends I talk to all the time that we toured with. Like Dave Heck was in Pale Horse when we toured with them. I still talk to him all the time.
nice.
Nary and Gino from Thick as Blood, I still talk to them all the time.
Ooh, thick
Uh,
as blood.
yeah. But so
No,
2007, Chris started having babies, and we did a couple tours. Like we toured with Amur and Farewell to Freeway for I think 3 or 4 weeks, and then we did a tour with Thick as Blood and the Miles Between,
wait a minute.
and
When you said Farewell to Fear, I think it was that the Mosh Lives tour. I think
different tour.
oh, because I was saying, I swear, because it was like Emir, Recon, like Legia, Red Eye Fly, After the Burial, and
So
like,
that was a year later in 2008, and I
okay,
was
because I
not
was,
there.
okay, my bad, because I swear I was like,
Yeah.
oh, could I have seen you at one point in time, like, and I didn't even know, but okay, that's a different story there
Right.
another
So
time.
what happened was we did some touring, and then Chris, our singer, was like, "Man, I got all these babies now. I got to be home with them." Um,
Understandable.
yeah. So he it's the right thing to do. And he stepped down, and we recorded before he stepped down. We recorded 4 songs that were pretty much they were on the MySpace page for a little bit, but then they were lost to time until they were put on as bonus tracks on this
Oh my gosh,
in
that
2016. But like we recorded the first version of that song, Viper City, and we re-recorded the song 13, and we did 2 other songs that later ended up being redone for the Welcome to Viper City album, um, Berserker, and the song that ended up being called Armageddon.
ah.
But when Chris was stepping down, we didn't really try out like singers really,
Mhm.
and we tried out this dude Alex, who's like real nice guy, but I wasn't really feeling his vocals,
Mhm.
and I was kind of outvoted. Like Alex was going to be the new singer, and I was like, man, I think my time has come to an end. So I
It ran
stepped
its course.
down, and then a few months later, Tony left as well. So so we all signed. So we signed to Rise even before Chris left. Um,
Oh.
so like on that contract, it's got my signature, Chris's signature, etc. But by the time the album for Rise Records was actually recorded, the album Welcome to Viper City, it was only Mike and Paul were left in the band. They had the new singer Alex, and my good friend Heavy Jerry was playing bass. They never replaced Tony. They just went on as a 4-piece because Tony Diaz, the most Diazable person I know, is irreplaceable. He was
Oh
also
my
in state
gosh, the most
champs.
Diazable person. Indeed.
Yeah,
What am I doing with my life? What am I doing with
yeah.
Diaz? I gotta get rid of this.
But Tony was in state champs many years later. Tony quit state
Yes.
champs, and I don't think they ever replaced Tony in state champs either.
Oh, so he's literally irreplaceable.
Yeah,
He's just leaving
uh,
a path behind, a wake, and
yeah.
everyone's just
No
like,
one
what
is
do we
as
do?
Diazable as Tony Diaz, basically.
He is the king of Diazable.
Yeah. But so yeah, so they did that CD, Welcome to Viper City. They toured even harder than we had been touring. They did that like 2-month tour, I think, the Mosh Lives tour.
That was a
They went
very
to
long
Europe.
tour. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I was always really proud of those guys. Always kind of was like, man, should I have quit? But it's all right. And then
I think it's
2009.
understandable. We all have those feelings of like, should
Yeah,
I have done a different thing on this decision and stuff
yeah.
and everything. But
Yeah,
I
but
think
they went through a bunch of different, not a bunch, but they went through a couple different bass players. They went through one more singer. Um, they ended up getting my buddy Jay DeLoya, who I voted for when we were first replacing Chris. I was like, yo, that
mm,
guy Jay has a great voice. But anyway, Jay ended up singing in the band in 2009 for a couple tours. Jay now has a company called Dead End Threads, which makes a lot of like horror themed. You've probably seen it online,
well,
videos and
oh,
stuff.
in a weird way, I kind of messaged him here and there, like talking about my brand, getting like kind of some advice and just talking with him. So like I didn't.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah. He's a lifelong resident of Viper City.
oh my
Um,
gosh, that is
but then
awesome.
after Jay did a couple tours with them, and then the band kind of went on ice because Mike got the opportunity to join Amur, and Recon was put on the back burner. But Mike had a lot of riffs, and eventually started putting them together into what would be the Hell EP.
Mm.
And Rob from Most Precious Blood ended up singing on that. Meanwhile, Tony and myself were like, "Yo, this stuff is awesome. We never would have left if like we could have been playing songs that are this good." Because we all wrote some of the Welcome to Viper City songs together, but then there were some songs that like Mike and Paul were jamming on where I was like, "Nah, I don't know, man." And Tony, I guess, felt the same way because we all left before that CD ended up being finished
If you
and
feel a
before they
certain
went
way,
to
you
the
feel a certain
studio.
way. You can't
Yeah,
change the how you feel. I understand that.
but
Yeah.
the songs on the Hell EP, like Tony and I were both like, "Dude, we want back in. Like this is awesome." And
Get us back on. Ah.
yeah, so in 2012, that came out. It was only released digitally. It was never on CD or anything. But it was 2012, so no one was buying CDs anyway.
I guess that was like right after or right before the death of it in a way, like
Yeah,
CDs. Yeah.
and then and then that we never toured since then, but we would do weekends now and then a few years ago, we actually got our old singer Chris back, um, because it's a different situation now where Chris's babies like are old enough to like brush their own teeth now because it's like
Mm.
15 years later, and also Recon doesn't tour. All we've done since Chris has been back in the band is a few local shows, and we flew to California for one show, and it's like you can be a dad and do that. You know what I mean? I'm not saying people can't be dads and be in touring bands, but you can't be a dad and be in a band that costs you money to go on tour.
Right.
Um,
I think we're in like a new like age. Like I've noticed, I think a new age of where like you don't necessarily have to break up, but you can just be like, as they're calling it, fest bands or like
yeah.
one-off shows, and like it doesn't matter. Like, and people are willing to travel. Heck, like I went halfway across the world just to see the Acacia Strain at Furnace Fest.
Right. Right.
Like that was low key like half the reason why I applied. Hit them and Koyo, and I was like, yeah, it's worth it. And so like you can be that band. Like we're gonna go play a show one-off, and people are like,
Yeah.
oh, Recon coming through. Like they will show up, they will come turn out, and like I don't think it was feasible back in the day, or I just think people weren't even thinking about it. They were just tour, and not really think about doing like a one off or like a festival event. Like it just wasn't like big like that, I guess.
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, the hardcore has got more popular over time.
I can imagine from
So
your
it's
perspective, yeah.
I think so. In the To the extent where you don't have to be Hatebreed to pay your bills by touring. You know what I mean? Like it used to
Yeah.
be Sick of It All was the biggest hardcore band ever. And then a few years later, like, wow, Hatebreed is even bigger than Sick of It All. And then it was like, well, that's it. Then like Terror came along. It's like, I mean, Terror tours 11 months out of the year. I guess they must not have jobs. So you'd see like a few bands like now and then where it's like, I guess that band pays their bills from playing music, which is fucking awesome. But that wasn't the norm. You know what I mean? And at some
Mm.
point over the last 15 years, I think you started seeing bands where it's like, I mean, you don't know everybody's individual situations, but for a while it would be like if there was a band that you knew that was touring like 10 months out of the year, they were still like 20 years old living with their folks, like barely
Mm.
making enough money to stay on the road, you know what I mean?
Right.
And at some point like this, I don't want to say style of music because it's more than that, not to sound corny, which we've established there's no such thing as corniness,
No, no
but
corniness here at all.
this subculture, to be kind of technical about it, has become more popular to the extent where there are bands that, yeah, man, like people have kids and they still stay in their bands like as their main source of income because you know it's like, well, what are they going to do? Quit playing music and have to work at Target or something for fucking $8 an hour, or they might make more money in their bands, and then when they're not on tour they can be around their kid 24/7 for like 2 months straight, you know what I mean? Which is
It's a
awesome. It's just
win-win.
like the fact that that's even possible is mind-blowing and awesome. Like people should be able to do something that the rest of us can enjoy, music,
Mm.
and feed their kid off of it, you know what I mean?
I think because
Like
like, okay.
what?
Oh, I was gonna say
No,
like because oh, it was gonna happen eventually. Um, I think we're just in a like because we're multitasking on a whole nother level in life these days, and like we can like look at like, oh wait, I can be in this band, have my kid, and play events here and there. You just gotta refigure your life. You can't tour all the time, but like let's just do one-offs here and there. And I think it just never clicked in a lot of people's heads back then to do that, or just it it, it just didn't seem like
I
an
mean,
idea.
also I think the internet makes it. I mean, before, if you wanted people to know who you were, you had to hit the road hard. Like,
Flyers,
whereas,
physical
but I mean, like,
presence.
be on tour. You know what I mean? If you wanted people outside your city to know who you were, you had to be on the road all the time.
Mm.
And so now it's like a band like us, like who did that back when you had to. We, Recon could, like a few years ago, we got flown out to California, and I think there was even some money left over. You know what I mean? But the fact that like the promoter was like, yeah, if I put Recon on the show, there'll be enough extra money coming in the door that I can pay for 4 flights. And but meanwhile, I also have another band flying in, and all the local bands, I'm paying them as well. And I'm like, the fuck, like there was never a Recon show where that much money was coming in the door. Um,
I can imagine just your mind like doing the mental gymnastics, like, what? Huh? What is he talking about? I don't have to
right.
drive all the way. I don't have to do a million. What?
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm in like a totally different world now because I I toured a lot. The couple of years I was in Recon when Recon was an active band. Because now I've been
Mm,
back in Recon for over 10 years, but we don't do that much. But I toured a lot um, in like the earlier era of Recon, and then I toured a lot later on when I was in First Blood, and I've done other tours like Scavengers is went on tour at one point, but
mm,
I've always had jobs. Like I never the most when I was in Recon when I was like 25, 26, I definitely built my life around it. Like had a cheap apartment, had a job where I could work, full time when I was home, still have insurance when I was on the road, and like to the dollar, like you're like, okay, I can spend this much money to eat while I'm
ooh,
home, this much money to eat while I'm on tour, and have like a loaf of bread and peanut butter on tour with me. You know what I mean?
oh, that
Um,
grind.
yeah, but since then, like I've always been like having a job and just taking time off from work. Like my coworkers will be like, oh, gonna take a week off to go to Disney World with my kids, and they're like, oh, I'm gonna take 2 weeks off to go to fucking Europe and play shows. So have fun with that. But I've been in a lucky situation where basically once I left Recon, I was like, fuck, like I need to make sure I can feed myself. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um, so ever since then, I've had like a steady job and just do this for fun. I mean, doing it in Recon was fun too, but it was like okay, this is like make or break. Like just gonna fucking go till the van explodes again, go till we all die in a fucking in the ocean. Now it's like maybe I like knowing that my bills are gonna be paid next month. So
It's
I'm
nice
in a
feeling
very
that
lucky
safety.
situation. Yeah, I'm in, like um yeah, I don't know. It's just I'm in a very fortunate situation where I don't have to like have it one way or the other. Like I can go on tour now and then, and
Mm.
it's okay if I lose money because I have a job where I get like fucking vacation days. So it's like fuck it, I'm still getting a paycheck. Um, and you figure if you're a boring person and go on vacation, you're losing money when you do that. At least if I'm sleeping in a van with my buddies, like not blowing money on a hotel. I
Smart way to save money and everything.
guess.
What? Which now, like, because I wanted to touch on the the one-off show you did in California, Crab Hands. I think was with Barry. Was it with Barry You're Dead? I think.
Yes.
Okay, like was I think it was called Loudfest.
I think Loudfest was a different fest. All
Okay, I'm
these
getting
fests have different names.
it's all getting
Yeah.
blended on. But and I wanted to segue into the talking about touring in Europe. But like that one-off show you did in California, like how was that show and everything going? Like at that show, do you remember it and everything? Like how it went off and everything?
I do. I remember that set better than I remember most sets because like
Ooh,
there was um there was some stress from well, actually more in the technical difficulties. I broke my wrist 2 days before, or sorry, 2 weeks before the show, a week or two before the show, not 2 days, a week or two before the show. So I had
okay.
a
Oh,
cast on my left wrist, and I could only use my first 2 fingers. And you might think, oh, Recon, you probably don't need any fingers. It's all just dun dun dun. Dun. But the way I play the bass lines, especially like if you listen to the demo version of the song Viper City, um, and like even the way I would play the Graves stuff, which is different than Tony played it on the CD. But ever since I joined, as Graves was coming out, like I always kind of like added more, like because I grew up like listening like Sick of It All and like stuff like that. So to me, the bass player's supposed to do something, you know, like
Hmm.
your little you know like Cro-Mags or Sick of It All, like fills in there.
They're supposed
Um,
to be heard. They're there.
yeah, you're part of the rhythm section. You know what I mean? If you're just gonna play the root notes of the guitar player could just have an octave pedal, and you can stay the fuck home. You know, so.
Hmm.
So yeah, I remember that set better than I remember most sets because usually like I'm in the zone, I'm just like living in the moment. But I had so much going on in my mind because I could only use two fingers, so I had been practicing all the songs, like playing them in a different way, like maybe using still trying to hit all the weird like not like playing fucking jazz scales and shit, but the
Hmm.
occasional different stuff I would do still trying to do all that, but with only two fingers. So maybe using like a different, So I was playing the songs in like a new way, basically. And Tony wasn't there. They were out with state champs, I think. So we were
Hmm.
playing as a four piece. We played a newer song that there's like a weird like guitar intro to. So we had that on a sampler just to like so I had the sampler pedal that was supposed to like I'm supposed to hit that, so it does a little like and then we all come into the
Hmm.
whatever, and it can still go
But
while Mike's playing the rhythm with me, but the sampler pedal didn't work, and
oh,
yeah, and we were using Bury Your Dead's gear because we flew out and like we're friends with those guys, but it, the bass player from Bury Your Dead wasn't there. They were playing as a four piece. So I'm talking to Chris Townick from Bury Your Dead. I'm like, dude, there's like a million pedals here. Like, I don't want to fuck your stuff up. Like,
what am I
he's like,
doing? Like,
yeah, he's like, oh, I don't know, it's Aaron's. I'm like, where's Aaron? He's like, oh, he's out with his other band. I'm like, what the fuck? So it was like a little
oh,
tense, but we had a great time. Uh, we were out there for a couple days. We all kind of went our own way a couple times. Like my old roommate Victoria lives out there, so I met up with her, and Paul used to live out there, so he met up with some friends and stuff like that. And Alex, who sang on the Welcome to Viper City CD,
hmm.
came out to the show, so it was cool to see. I hadn't seen him since I
Ooh.
quit the band, probably.
Oh,
Like
wow. Was that a surprise to you, or like you knew he was gonna be there?
um, I think we found out that day, maybe I don't know, but it was
Oh.
awesome to see him. Um, And yeah, it's cool to see the Bury Your Dead guys. Bury Your Dead had like their old singer Mike sing some songs with them, and
Oh, that's the show
um,
with Mike Terry who came back and like did some.
yeah, and they've
Oh,
since done that again since then. But
was that
um,
Chain Reaction by chance?
yes,
Okay, then I vividly remember this flyer thing. Like, oh, that's a pretty
yeah,
sick
and I'd
lineup.
been
And that
there
looks.
before, but I'd never played there before, so it was very cool for
Oh,
me. And
I,
Paul's brother Tim lived out there at the time, so he came to the show. It was a great day. It
it
was
was just
awesome.
like a big reunion. Like the show was there, but it was just more like, hey, I'm having a great time, like seeing old friends and just
Yeah,
kicking it.
it felt like we were on tour. Like it just everybody's there, the packed house, like seeing lots of people who you only see like when you're in the middle of some random city, because you're both on tour. And stuff was breaking, so that felt like we were on tour.
Hey guys, have you checked out any of the merch from Diazable that we have on our online store? We have some of these designs up, some cool gym looking gear. Fan favorite, Baby Noodle, Be a Fucking Devil. Yeah, some of our most hated merch ever, but I love Hate Breed. Yay! Sticker packs too. Who doesn't like Baby Noodle eating pizza? Yeah. Keychains. Yeah. And of course, we have koozies. Yeah, who doesn't like a good koozie? So check out our merch store, diazable.com, and support your local business. And a friend who's not trying to work a 9 to 5 anymore. Trying to do something with my life.